So how y'all doing this morning? Amen. Good day? Yes. I love this time of year in the morning. It's just like perfect. I sometimes think maybe we ought to just grab these speakers, go out in the field and have church out there, huh?
Let's do it.
How cool would that be? So we'll put it on the back burner as the things to do list. Well, a few weeks ago, we looked at love. And I gave you some acrostics to memorize the 15 attributes of love in 1 Corinthians. Remember that? Love is patient, love is kind, love does not envy. Love doesn't peck. Then we went on to love doesn't brag, isn't arrogant, isn't self-edifying. Love isn't base. And a loving person doesn't behave like a pig, not easily provoked, doesn't behave inappropriately, and doesn't hold a grudge. Pig. And then a loving person isn't a brute, because love believes all things, does not rejoice in unrighteousness, but rejoices in the truth, and love endures. And then several months ago, we looked at the Ten Commandments, and we had them memorized in like less than 5 minutes. If you remember that, we looked at the pictures. Well, we're going to do something similar today. We're going to look at the entire Old Testament in 1/2 hour. So you're going to understand at least the flow of the entire Old Testament before you leave this morning, or my name isn't Harry Mudd. All right, the Bible, take it out, hold it. Just want you to get a handle on that. When you open it up, there's two major sections. There's the Old Testament and the New Testament. Together, there are 66 books. 66 separate writings in the Bible from Genesis to Revelation. Got 39 in the Old Testament, and you got 27 in the New Testament. Now, it sounds like 39, 27, there's not much of a disparity, there's not much of a difference. But there really is, because the Old Testament has close to 1,000 pages, whereas the New Testament only has like 300 pages. So the Old Testament is more than 3 times the size of the New Testament. And yet most people spend all their time studying the New Testament, which is good, don't get me wrong. If you study it, study it. But God spoke back then too. And He gave us 1,000 pages. He wanted us to know something. And so I don't think the Old Testament is a dead book, a book we should be ignoring. But it is a little confusing, and I recognize that. For example, you might be reading through one of the books of the Old Testament, and maybe it mentions a king. Like you open up to Isaiah and it says, in the year that Uzziah died, I saw the Lord lifted up. Who's Uzziah? When did he live? What did he do? Well, you got to go back to another book of the Bible to figure out when that happened. So the Bible starts chronologically, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, then all of a sudden it deviates, and we get all these side stories, and then you read through them. But if you read through them, you forget where you were in the chronology, and then you flash back again, and you're all messed up in your head. So hopefully by the time we finish this morning, I'll fix some of that for you, and you've got a cheat sheet. I gave you a handout. Take it out, wave it, let me make sure you got it. Excellent. There should be pencils in most of the pews to help you fill this out. All right, before we get to the cheat sheet, though, a little bit more information. The first 5 books of the Bible are known as the Law. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. This is what people call the Torah. First 5 books. Then that's followed by 12 books of history. Altogether, that gives us 17 books. Then there's 5 books of poetry. Back to the number 5 again. Then we have 5 major prophets, 12 minor prophets, and we're back at 17 again. So it's like there's symmetry here. You got the human experience on one side, the human heart in the middle, and the human experience on the other side. You got to ask yourself, is that a coincidence? I don't think so. In the heart of the Bible, we deal with the heart of man. And as we go through the Old Testament, you're going to see that God's got a plan, and He shares that plan with us. But I think the biggest problem with the Old Testament is the chronology. Everybody gets confused about who ruled when, what happened. So I'm going to give you a real simple way of understanding the whole Old Testament chronology, and then we'll jump into the present from the time of Jesus forward. If you just work in 500-year increments, you can understand the entire timeline of the Bible, and we'll start with 2000 BC. That's when Abraham lived. All right? So if you just know in your brain 2000 BC, that's when Abraham lived. Then you whack off 500 years, and that'll put you at 1500 BC. That's when Moses lived. From Abraham to Moses, you now know 500 years. Whack off 500 years, put you at 1000 BC, there's King David. David had a son, Solomon. Solomon built the temple. So you know the temple was built roughly 1000 BC. Whack off another 500 years, and that's when Israel got destroyed, and the temple was destroyed, and they went off to Babylon, 500 BC. 500 BC also happens to be the golden age of Greece, just to give you some time. We had already been on the planet for like 1,000 years before Greece hit its golden age. Jump another 500 years. 500 BC, jump 500 years, where does that put you? 0. Jesus. Jesus was born. So we start our modern era. And that's really the whole New Testament fits in with that 100-year period. So in that period, the New Testament. Now, if you add 500 years, that puts you in 500 AD. That's pretty much when Islam was born, for example. Islam came on the scene around 500 AD. You add 500 years to 1000 AD, and that'll put you in the Middle Ages. Put you in the time of the Crusades. Put you in the time of weird things going on and the darkness on the planet. But you add 500 years to that, and you're at the Renaissance, 1500 BC, well, right around the time that Columbus sailed in the 1600s. You add 500 years to that, and here we are today. So if you look at the world in 500-year periods, you can pretty much understand everything that was going on. 2000 BC Abraham, 1500 BC Moses, 1000 BC King David, 500, you got the destruction, 500, the birth of Jesus. That should give you a good overview and help you understand the Scriptures. All right, now you can take out your chart, take out your pencil, and we're going to get busy with it. There's your chart. Now look at the middle row. The middle column, there are 11 boxes. You can count them with your finger on your piece of paper if you want. Starting at the left, just stick to the middle. Don't worry about all the ones sticking off here, there, and next squares. Just look in the middle. You got 11 boxes with a gap of 70 years between the last 2 of the 11. Those 11 boxes represent 11 Bible books that carry us through the entire Old Testament chronologically. 11 books. All the rest of them happened at the same time as the others. That's why it's so hard to understand the chronology of the Bible. You all know what the first one is. The first one is Genesis. Go ahead and pencil that in there. Genesis is a book about origins. God gave us 2 chapters to tell us how everything was created. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. On day 1, he did this. On day 2, he did this. On day 3, he did that. Second chapter repeats pretty much what the first chapter had to say, adds a few more details. 2 chapters is all God gives us to tell us how he created the heavens and the earth. In the 3rd chapter, we got the origin of sin, how sin came into our universe. 2 chapters, the origins of everything that God made. 3rd chapter, the origin of sin. Chapters 4 through 11, or 10, there's that transition chapter, 4 through 10 or 11 are the origins of the nations. Okay, so 2 chapters, the origins of the universe. 1 chapter, the origin of sin. 4 through 10, 6 chapters, the origins of the human nations, where we all came from, how we got there, broken up into different people groups. From chapter 12 to chapter 50 focuses on one nation. Which one? Shout it out. You know it. Israel, exactly. And only 4 guys. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. Chapter 12 through 50. So we talk about Genesis being the book of origins. God only gives 2 chapters to the origins of the universe, only a fraction of a chapter to the origin of sin, just a handful of chapters to the origins of all the nations in the world, and then chapters 12 through 50 to talk about the origin of the children of Israel. What's Genesis about? The origin of the children of Israel. Because chapter 3 introduced sin. So from chapter 12 on, God's program to deal with sin. And if you remember, and I've taught you this in the past, God chose to raise up a whole new people through which the Messiah would come. The Messiah would come and die for our sins and flip over on its head what happened in Genesis chapter 3. Jesus is called, in the book of Romans, the second Adam. First Adam messed it up. Second Adam fixed it. So Genesis is a really cool book, but it breaks up real simple. 2 chapters everything, 1 chapter sin, 6 chapters dealing with the origins of all nations, and then chapters 12 on the origin of the children of Israel, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. Genesis gives us our starts.